Hi, and welcome to another edition of Ask Ralph and Lahni. Today we're going to be talking about indoor chemicals, indoor pollution. And if you were to try to count on your fingers all of the chemicals that you come into contact with on a regular daily basis inside your home, you would run out of fingers.
Pretty quickly. Yes, it's amazing. Every single year, the chemical companies are manufacturing and designing new chemicals, and yet very few of these are tested to see how they affect humans, us folks. And they're put into production, they're used in products, they're around us all the time, and yet most people have no idea of how they're going to affect us. And the effects are pretty powerful.
The challenge is that we get these effects subtly and they build up over time. But of course, they've also been related to the common things that you can think of is allergies or sneezing, rashes, those sorts of things. But the things that we might not think about are things like they're being connected to conditions like arthritis or brain fog or birth defects or even death of small pets and animals after there's been carpet cleaning or furniture cleaning or even exterminators in the house. So they can have some really serious effects on your life.
Right. Even in terms of our environment, the carpets, the paint on the walls, the fabrics that are used, many of these today are synthetics. They're not things that our body was ever designed to deal with easily. And so we pick up these toxins. And one of the things that we're going to talk about today is how do you get these toxins back out of your system? Because your body wasn't even designed to deal with these toxins. So it's not always that clear about how to get them back out of the system. So you might need a little bit of extra help.
People are pretty familiar with the concept of off-gassing, and some of these products let off their toxic particles into the air for periods of a month, 6 months, a year, maybe longer afterwards, after they've been built. And a lot of the building products are glues and materials that have a very long period of this off-gassing that we find to be a problem in our work in feng shui, let alone with our work in herbology.
In fact, remember when the term sick buildings appeared?
Exactly.
That was a bunch of years ago, and they have made some progress on that. People have worked actively to improve that, designers and product developers and such, but there are still more than enough problems with environmental toxins, just in terms of the types of chemicals that people keep underneath their sink, or in their laundry room, or in their garage. These are things that we're around all the time, and yet we're not aware of how much they might be impacting us, and even more so impacting our children, because they're much, much more sensitive.
So, of course, one of the things that you use hopefully daily is toothpaste. And surprisingly, the chemicals in toothpaste are things that you would think are innocuous, but of course they also have that poison control label on there, harmful if swallowed. And so I think a lot more people are becoming aware of the fact that fluoride is a big problem. A lot of what is diagnosed as arthritis in this country is actually fluoridosis or fluoride poisoning. And there's been many studies and many papers written on that condition since they first found that. And a lot of places are lobbying to have the fluoride mandatory requirements taken out of the water system for that very reason. So you want to definitely use a toothpaste that does not have fluoride in it, but the fluoride protection comes from the fact that fluoride was very hard to study initially. It actually etches itself onto the beakers in the test and the test tubes in the laboratory. That's how it protects your teeth from tooth decay, is by putting a coating on your teeth that is very, very difficult to get out of your body. In fact, they say that less than 30% of the fluoride that ever enters your body ever leaves because it etches itself or attaches itself on so firmly as to become a part of that surface. So the same way that it etches onto your teeth, it can etch onto your bones. And try as you might, you're going to swallow a little bit of that water with that fluoride in there. And if your water is fluoridated, of course, you're going to get that. So that's going to build up on your bones and actually create the situation that most of us think is arthritis. So you want to use a toothpaste that doesn't have it, but what do you do to protect your teeth? And we like to recommend that you use xylitol in your toothpaste. There are also candies and chewing gum that have xylitol, and xylitol is a very interesting kind of a sugar. It's a 5-sided sugar where most sugars are a 6-sided sugar. And bacteria like to eat sugar, but they eat the 5-sided sugar thinking that it's going to act like the 6-sided sugar, except they can't process it. So the little bacteria burst. I like that. So that's how it protects you from the buildup of tartar and plaque on your teeth, because it's the bacteria that actually cause that. Another reason that you would get excessive buildup of tartar and plaque on your teeth is often associated with a condition called dry mouth. And xylitol actually makes you produce more saliva. This is particularly helpful for people who are getting a little older, because your saliva production slows down. And of course, saliva is a very important part of your enzyme and digestive system. So you really want to make sure that you're making enough saliva and that you're digesting out these dead bacteria that would cause the tartar and plaque on your teeth.
One of the biggest industries today is shampoo and conditioner. Anything to do with the hair is always a big business these days. And that's great. We want our hair to look nice. But you have to consider, what are you putting on there? Once again, look at that bottle and see how many things you recognize on there. There's components that are in commercial shampoos that are quite dangerous to the body. And it's been recognized for a long time. But because these companies have very large lobbies, they're able to keep selling them. It's very easy these days to find a natural shampoo and a natural conditioner. They are out there. Companies really want our business, and they are aware of the fact that we want natural products, so they are producing them. So, go look for them. Choose in that direction. When I started as an herbalist, now more than 40 years ago, these products weren't available. All you had, I think, was Dr. Bronson's magic soap. That was pretty much it. That's what you could use for everything. That was almost the only natural soap out there. It wasn't a great soap compared to today, but at least it was natural. So find the products that you want, because realize that when you're out there in the shower, your body is completely exposed. You're absorbing all this through your skin. The other thing you're absorbing through your skin is the chlorine in the water systems. People don't think about this. They'll buy a water filter, they'll filter the water that they drink with and cook with, and you really want to make sure you do that, because there's hundreds of chemicals in tap water. So you want to make sure you filter your water one way or another. The reverse osmosis is the best system, and the more you filter your water, the better you filter, the better results you're going to get. But what about filtering the water for your shower? It doesn't mean you have to put a full house filter on. You can go buy very good carbon filters that get mounted right to the shower. You change them out about every 3 months, 3 to 6 months, depending upon how often the shower is used, that do a very good job. That chlorine is very difficult for your body to deal with. It's helpful to realize that chlorine first became very popular during the First World War as mustard gas. It was used as a poison for killing soldiers on the battlefield. After the war was over, they had all this mustard gas around, trying to figure out what to do with it, and so they used it for detergents. The other place they also used it was for chemotherapy against cancer. And in fact, many of the chemo drugs today still are chlorine-based. The body does not like them. They're very, very toxic. That's why so many people they'll kill the cancer, but the person will die of the treatment, because honestly, chlorine is not that good for the body. So whenever possible, don't use chlorine cleansers. There's lots of other good cleansers out there. Spend the money for them. They're very effective. And we actually use a Nature's Fresh soap that we get from our company, Nature's Sunshine, that we've used for years for our laundry detergent. It's funny, one of the most popular articles about health that we've ever posted to the web, and it's been republished thousands of times by other websites, is about the high incidence of asthma among inner city children. And what's the major cause of it? I mean, the difference is really dramatically higher. It's that in the inner city, they tend to use the cheapest laundry detergents. And the laundry detergents that they use are very high in phosphates. The phosphate is a very abrasive chemical that basically really gets into clothes and gets things out in it, but it does it very cheaply as well. It's a very cheap type of soap. The United States is pretty much the only modern Western country in which phosphate soaps are permitted. Every place else they've been banned. Think about children. They're very, very sensitive, they're very tender, and then you're going to wash their clothes in a phosphate soap and wash their sheets with a phosphate soap, and then they lay down, and at night, the body is up to 2,000 to 10,000 times more sensitive when you're sleeping than when you're awake, and their bodies are being subjected to this phosphate environment while they're sleeping, when they're so sensitive. They're breathing the stuff into their lungs, it inflames their lungs, and that's the beginning of asthma, is inflammation of the lungs. So this is something you really want to address. It's funny, when you have a baby, you would never wash their clothes with everyone else's. You use a baby soap. And later on, at which point, as soon as you can get them out of the crib, you're throwing their clothes in with everybody else's, and suddenly these other problems are up. A lot of skin rashes, respiratory issues, even headaches. That's phosphate soap. So you shouldn't even have it in the house. One of the problems that we have in a lot of modern homes is that designers started saying, hey, let's put the laundry rooms by the bedrooms because that's where all the laundry comes from. Rather than having to go all the way down to the basement, to wash the clothes, put it upstairs. Great idea for cutting down the amount of walking you have to do, which is not necessarily a good thing. Bad idea because you now have all these chemicals that are sitting so close to where everyone is sleeping. So if you have one of those kinds of houses, one of those laundry room arrangements, you better make sure you only have very, very natural products inside that laundry room.
Picking up on Ralph's comment about the laundry detergent, we use that concentrated cleaner for our laundry, but we also use it in different dilutions to make our dish soap and to make spray cleaners. There's actually a formula on the bottle that tells you how to make up the concentrate in the bottle for each different application. There's many other products like that on the market. Simple Green is one that comes to mind, where you can buy one product and you can make many products out of it by just varying the dilution of those sprays. So think about these things. Again, these are things that you use on a daily or almost daily basis. And so your exposure is not just while you're using them, but as Ralph said, you're going to be wearing the clothes that have been laundered in those things. You're going to be eating off the dishes that have been washed in that dishwashing detergent. So you're going to have these effects are ongoing, and they just multiply and multiply until they build up in the system so much that you're going to have to actually detox from them.
Now, we haven't even talked about chemicals that come off of the cars and outdoor pollution and things like that. In truth, it's been shown that indoor pollution is much, much worse than outdoor pollution. Due to all these chemicals we have inside the house, the chemicals that come off of carpeting, the chemicals that come off of the paint. You move into a new home that has new carpeting and new paint, it will outgas for a long period of time. The insulation inside the walls will outgas. All these different solvents and glues, these outgas for long periods of time. We were traveling not that long ago, and we were in a new hotel. It was only about 6 months old, which was very nice because it was very clean and in perfect condition. But the smells in the rooms were new. And we noticed it. So we immediately went out and bought some essential oils. We poured some essential oils, I think we used lemon and grapefruit, on some tissues and tucked them in various corners around the room and refreshed them twice a day. When we would walk back in that room each day, the smell of this, the aroma, was just wonderful, and it really solved a lot of the problems. We didn't get any headaches, we didn't get any respiratory issues, and we did notice that the staff seemed to like us a lot too, because when they went in the room, they had a wonderful feeling from this as well. Now, just to tell you a little story, one of the ways I got back into health full time was I had worked as an herbalist for many, many years, and then had left that because I was also working in design and went into working in factories. managed factories for many years. And after 16 years of that, from all the chemicals, I became very ill. I became very ill. I got to the point where I could barely walk into the building. I couldn't be around the machinery. I had to change careers. I had to leave that career. I had to leave my career as a sculptor, which I did a lot of work in steel and stainless steel welding. I just couldn't be around these materials. And I began the process of detoxifying. I began the process of cleaning my body, getting these years and years of toxins out of my body. And one of the first places I started was with bentonite clay. And bentonite clay is a natural clay that's a volcanic clay. And what it does is it pulls toxins out of the system. And the way you can use it is you can take it internally. You can add, a tablespoon of the liquid bentonite clay to your water, or add it to your herbs, drink it, and will actually pull toxins out internally. What I did was I took the liquid bentonite clay, put it into a tub, and soaked in it for about 20 minutes. You never want to soak for more than 20 minutes because the skin is a permeable membrane, and you will basically send out toxins for about 20 minutes, but after 20 minutes you'll start absorbing them back in again. So I did this a couple of different times with bentonite clay, and I would actually find chunks of metal and particles from all my years of being around metal magnetically stuck to the tub. That's how effective this was. And I would get out very carefully because it really makes you a little wobbly-legged, and then really load up on various different types of positive minerals because this pulls all kinds of minerals out of the body. And I gradually worked my way through that. I worked with a product called Enviro Detox, which massively cleanses the liver but also goes into the lymphatic system and the other parts of the body. There are wonderful herbs for getting these things out of your system. And in truth, the best way to get these things, these heavy metals and toxins out of your system are with herbs. They are our most effective cleansers.
Of course, when these toxins build up in the system, the main organ used to filter these toxins out of your system is the liver. So you can imagine that the liver takes a big hit when you're subjected to these constant onslaughts of toxic chemicals in your system. So specifically, as Ralph was saying, that herbs are so good for cleaning things out of the body, they're also really good for rebuilding. And there's a specific herb called milk thistle. The Latin name is silymarin, and it's used sometimes in conventional medicine as well, which we're very happy to hear, because it actually helps to regenerate damaged liver cells. So every organ in the body replaces every cell on a certain timetable. You replace all the cells in the long bone of your leg over a period of 7 years. You replace different things over certain times so that as years go by, you've got all brand new cells. If you feed them the same things, you're going to get the same crappy cells. If you feed them new good things, you're going to get better, stronger, healthier cells. And this is one of the things that you want to feed to your liver because you replace all the cells in your liver over about a 10-month period. So you can go from cirrhosis to a clean liver in 10 months if you clean up your environment, your exposure to environmental toxins, your diet, and rebuild those cells with something good like milk thistle. I find that it's very soothing to people who have stressed livers. They find that it really calms down that stressed liver feeling, and while it's rebuilding, it's a great antioxidant for the liver. So all of these things, it just lets the liver work a little less hard. The liver is really the hardest working organ in the body. It's the biggest organ in the body. I mean, it takes up a large space in your rib cage, and we actually have a lot more liver than we actually need to survive. And the reason for that is that there's the expectation that toxins will build up and parts of the liver will get damaged, and that you can still live a relatively healthy life with smaller amounts of those liver cells functioning. But why not have them work at optimum? So milk thistle is a favorite herb of ours.
Another thing you want to consider too, if you have a attached garage in your house, if you store paints, if you store solvents and other types of chemicals out in your garage, be aware of the fact that those fumes are working their way inside your house. You're thinking, well, no, the door is shut. Do you ever open the door? Well, when you open the door, does it create a breeze? When people walk through a place, does it create a breeze? You are pulling those fumes into the house, and they are affecting people. So even in that case, you want to make sure that you have those toxins as close to the exterior door as possible, to the outside, so that those fumes are not being encouraged to come inside of the house. And of course, if you have old ones around that you're not using, get rid of them. Send them to a safe recycling area. You don't need to have that toxin in your house unnecessarily. Besides, you could probably use the space, which is very similar to what you deal with in the workplace. What kind of chemicals are you affected by in the workplace? Even in a big office complex, what do they clean the floors with? What do they clean the windows with? What is the machinery made out of? The technology, what are the fabrics like? A lot of these synthetic fabrics actually can be very irritating. They outgas. You move into a new office, they have new carpet, they have new chairs. These things all outgas. So you need to use herbs and supplements to protect your body against these things and help your body consistently clean. Don't wait until you get sick and then start the detox. Work consistently on detoxing your body, because you're not living in a natural world. We are living in these artificial environments. Remember, outdoors is always much cleaner indoors. I worked in very, very heavy-duty factories. We had all kinds of chemicals. I was actually the guy who was given the books that listed every chemical that we had in the plant and what the chemical damages that could be done to the body. And so I had to be aware of this stuff. And of course, I was the one who got tagged by it. But a lot of people there were affected by it. It wasn't just me. I was just more aware of it, and I was probably more willing to do something about it. Another thing too, what if you park your car in your garage? Remember all the fumes that come off of a car naturally? What about the gasoline? There are vents to the gasoline tank. Gasoline evaporates, it's going to evaporate into the house. The cleansers for the windshield, the oil itself, all these different things, these things percolate inside of a house. What if you have a bedroom up above that car? These fumes rise, they percolate up into the bedroom above it. If you have a child sleeping up there and they're having all kinds of respiratory problems, rashes, eye problems, brain fog, you need to maybe park that car out on the curb, out in the driveway. Your child is more important to you than your car. And if your child's not more important to your car, we really need to talk. So these are the things you need to look at. Realize that we're in this artificial world. Realize that we live in natural bodies. And, they don't always mix perfectly. Now, Lahni mentioned feng shui. And then we kind of left it hanging there. But it's a fascinating subject, and we've been feng shui practitioners for, many years at this point. And we've written 3 different books about feng shui. Our first one was Feng Shui and the Tango in 12 Easy Lessons, a practical guide to romance. So you can tell it wasn't the most serious feng shui tome ever written, but it did have some game, and it still does. It's actually still in print, and I think the 4th edition now. We also wrote happiness lessons and prosperity lessons, because we always know from being practitioners and consultants that the 2 things that people most ask about are love and money, or money and love. But there's some wonderful things about feng shui that are helpful when it comes to understanding how to live with chemicals in our life. For instance, as a practitioner, the first thing you do is when you walk into a space, you notice what you feel, and what you smell, and what you see. You see, when you walk to a doorway, that compression of the doorway turns on your fight or flight reflex. And one of the things that does is it sharpens your sense of smell. It makes things clearer for you visually, makes things sound more accurately to your ears, but your nose gets real active. So when you walk into a space, notice what you're smelling as the first thing. Once you're in the space, that will calm down. But remember what we said before. For scent, something has to travel through the air and land in your nose. And that's something you want to be aware of. Your body is absorbing that. So notice what you smell as you walk in the door. I remember we did a consultation once for a yoga center, and we walked in the door, and the first thing we noticed was gasoline. Gasoline at a yoga center? I mean, can you think of anything quite so disruptive? Yet the people who were there all the time, they didn't even notice it anymore. Where was the gasoline coming from? Next door was a rental center, and they would power wash their equipment outside the back door. And the water would pool up. And of course, these things all used gasoline, or many of them did. And the gasoline would pool up, and then those fumes would waft their way into the yoga center. It was having a serious impact, both a health impact and an emotional impact and a business impact on this yoga center. And we had them address it with the landlord so that if they were going to wash their equipment outside, that water would be contained, it would be diverted away from them. This is a big issue these days in terms of environmental protection. Where does waste gasoline go? One of the biggest gasoline polluters in the country is actually lawnmowers, because lawnmowers don't have the catalytic converters and other devices that cars have to reduce the fumes.
In our work as herbalists and naturopaths, it often crosses over into our work in environmental design and feng shui, because we've worked with many clients who we've worked with herbally, and then when we go to work with them on their spatial issues, we find out what stresses are in their environment that actually provoke the problem or keep them from making progress in healing from that problem. So your spatial design is as important as the design that you create inside your body for wellness through herbs and supplements.
I remember a particular case where we were working with a person who kept having all kinds of what you might call autoimmune problems. And then we found out that she was living in a house that was basically just overtaken by mold. Well, the body recognizes a mold as a toxin. It turns on the autoimmune system. The immune system produces huge amounts of white blood cells, and it just makes the body overly sensitive because of what the environment is doing to it. And that mold, that's a natural product, but we've seen many people who have had similar problems due to a chemical in an area, a respiratory problem with, fumes, skin issues, rashes. Whenever you see these things that are very external or respiratory, always look at the chemicals that are nearby, because they can oftentimes be the primary factor. And then start by changing the environment, and then next look at what herbs and supplements you can use that will help you defend against those types of things in the world. And you have to realize that once a person becomes sensitive to this, you can detoxify them, but their body will continue to be sensitive because the body has an awareness of that. It's like you get burned on the stove, you're cooking later, your body can feel that heat in a very different way than it could before. So, once again, you spent a little bit of time with Ralph and Lahni, this time learning about how to live in a world full of chemicals that are not necessarily your friends. And we hope you got something out of it. We hope it helps you in your quest for better health. Yes?
And if you have a question about it, just ask Ralph and Lahni.
Yep. Ask Ralph and Lahni.